Hvað að fara að gerast nú?
Og við erum að fara í svo spennandi ferð. Við erum að fara hérna á kajak, hérna alveg inn voginn. Hlusta þar á sætan fyrirlestur jarðfræðina sem bara ég í, það Jakob jarðfræðingur sem gerir það. Og síðan ætlum við að róa hér yfir Nauthólsvíkina. Þar ætlum við að grilla saman. Og síðan fáum við Stefán Pálsson til að segja okkur allt hermennina sem voru í skóginum í Öskjuhlíðinni og hann kemur svo víða við og það svo mikið að minju þar frá því að hermennirnir voru og svo þetta fyrir við tilbaka því að það þarf alltaf að skila bátunum á sama stað.
Þannig að þema dagsins, það er draumur að dansa með Dáta.
Já, draumur að vera með Dáta og dansa fram á nótt. Nú svo þegar við komum tilbaka þá mátti hendur okkur í sjóinn.
Já, sömuleiðis.
Gaman.
Lífið leikur við okkur.
Lífið leikur við okkur. Það er mjög kvikandi á leiðinu.
Yeah, it's really.
What are you doing now?
I'm enjoying a very fun... What are you doing?
I'm video.
I'm video, not very well. I'm enjoying a fine barbecue lunch.
Became later on a hotel for the airport here in Reykjavik. So it's a very old, bad building. There are holes on it. We have mice in here. It's not heated. It's a cold house. And the kids love it. Because the kids are allowed to go around and play and hang out, and nobody worries about them destroying or doing something bad. So we have here a stronger social group than in any other club in Iceland, because nobody cares if they damage something in the house. Nobody is worried about the flooring. Nobody is worried about... So they can actually be here, and they treat this well. This is all sort of fairly okay. It's, but they come here for practice. They usually show up an hour early because they want to hang out here. And when the practice is finished, they usually call home and say, "Can you pick me up an hour later?" And that's because they just find a place which they can call their own.
Like flying, like you have to fly smaller airplanes before you can do something else.
We have...
This is an old idea. Because the big plan to heat up the whole of Reykjavik with hot water from Reykjavik in Mosfellsveit was put forward in the 1930s. And from day one, people realized that this would mean pumping the water to tanks on the top of the hill, use the highest point in Reykjavik, and then you could use just the pressure and gravity to spread the hot water to all the British sailed into the harbor and put their troops on land. Someone went and woke up the Prime Minister, saying the army has arrived, Iceland is being occupied. and that the Prime Minister briefly woke up and asked the British or the Germans, and they said the British. And then he said, okay, fine then, and went back to sleep. A lot of Canadian soldiers and of other nationalities, and you know, they needed washing houses, and they needed stores, etc. And then the building where we are standing, a long, narrow building. You can see one wall here, the other one is around here, and this is approximately the end, and it goes all the way to the path, walking path. So it's a long, very thin building on 2 floors. Do you know what it was?
Hospital?
It was a pigeon house. They were growing pigeons, dúfur. Kofi is stretching it. You would think, well, was it because the British soldiers were such bird lovers or needed a hobby? Oh no. This was next to an airport. And the pilots, when they went, you know, back and forth from the country, they were equipped with 5 pigeons that they put under their seat, so that if they would crash somewhere out there, they would write down their location and then send the pigeons, you know, and hope that they would be brought back from safety. I have never heard of anyone being rescued using this technique, you know. It was probably, you know, so it was maybe to boost the morale, you know, with the pilots thinking, you know, what if I crash? This project was called Million. I collected half of the money.
Yeah,
so they had a telephone. They had a telephone line over, and it's actually, it's such a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Because the biggest house in Viðey, that was the house where they had the telephone, and it burned down in the early 1920s. And yeah, and the people on land noticed, you know, saw the flames. So they obviously called up and said, you know, your house is on fire. At that time, everyone was outside, you know, trying to put out the fire. And then the phone started ringing, and one guy ran in and answered it. You know, only to learn that the house was burning around him, you know. So, yeah. So, no pigeons there. What was going to be the obvious target for an enemy army. So, it was all about protecting the airport. So you would have men with guns or heavy artillery spread all over Öskjuhlíð, and you would have a lot of water tanks. Water tanks, well, both they needed a lot of water for and mostly, you know, to be able to cut out fires. And there is this slight problem, you know, the catch-22. How do you, you know, if you need a train to build a harbor, how are you going to bring that train to land? So the thing was, we had Viðey. Viðey was the main oil port of Iceland. The Danish oil ships went there and pumped oil into the oil tank of this country, and then they put that on barrels and brought it to land on small boats. And the same they did with the train. The train was brought to Viðey, put on land, dismantled, put in small rowing boats, taken to Reykjavik, and then put together. And so during the Second World War, the British, they went back to those mines and expanded them, and they decided to dig them out in those circular forms that you see here. Because the plan was to kill two birds with one stone. Afterwards, they could fit oil tanks into those like cup-shaped holes, and then they would throw some turf and nets and rubbish on top of it, hoping that a short-sighted German fighter pilot would not notice it. Because those tanks, they would be sitting ducks for the Germans. And there were other ambitious attempts at doing the same thing. Like there was one big oil tank on Skúlagata near the sea. Was right, next to the sea, and they painted big windows and doors on that, hoping, that will go as a funkish building.
Já, Liða, hvað erum við búin að vera að bauka í dag?
Sigla, labba, læra.
Grilla.
Já. Já, tína, spjalla.
Vera með vissulega.
So what have you been doing today?